ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for our next Power Pact session, I did want to take this opportunity to share with you a few things that we at IIA India have been up to over the past several months. We've sort of have a new team under the leadership of TK, and honestly, what we've been doing over the past few months is really focusing on member services. Let me give you a few snippets. In the last 6 months, we've had almost 76 trainings that we have conducted, over 153 hours, and we have had attendance from over 8,159 participants. That's a fair amount of learnings and knowledge that we've been able to put out over the past 6 months. We've also begun a new initiative of having women's clubs across all of our chapters. And today we have 6 women's clubs linked to all of our chapters, which promotes the profession of internal audit amongst our women members and sort of deals with challenges which might be unique to them perhaps. We are also focusing on our student membership, and this is something new that we're beginning in this year. We want to focus on our students because they honestly are the future of our profession. So we have begun a new membership category for a student membership at a very attractive price of only 2,000 rupees a year. And that entitles them to attend all of these training sessions and have access to all the various literature and knowledge that is put out by the IIA Inc. as well as IIA India. And lastly, I think I made reference of this in the morning session as well. Under our new dynamic editor, we've sort of reinvigorated our IIA India magazine, and the latest version of that was just put out last evening. Like I said, it's 72 pages odd of really insightful content. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the next panel. But before I do that, I would want to introduce my friend and colleague Nikhil Kochar, who is the chief advisor to IIA India. Right, Nikhil has had a long and rich history with the IIA, first at the Delhi chapter level, where he was the president for a year, and then moving on to IIA India. He's played several roles, and his most recent role is that of being the chief advisor to IIA India. I'm going to put it that in his spare time, perhaps, he also is a partner in JSS and Associates, and does a lot of risk advisory and internal audit work over there. But he is our representative of IIA India on the global executive leadership team of IIA Global. So, Nikhil plays a very important role in advocating India to IIA Inc. And has been one of the instrumental individuals who's also helped in putting this conference together along with his team. So with that, Nikhil, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bursan, for your kind words. Just a confirmation, I do hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So good evening to all the participants. Our session today on artificial intelligence and technology in audits and remote auditing actually really resonates with the conference theme of internal auditing in the virtual world. We are absolutely delighted to have a star-studded panel of eminent personalities who are going to be sharing their thoughts and knowledge with us. I will start with Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, who's the non-executive chairman of L&T Financial Holdings Limited, L&T Mutual Fund, Future Lifestyle Fashions Limited, NSDL, E-Governance Infrastructure, Blue Star, and other companies. His directorships, independent directorships, include ACC Limited, Ambuja Cements, Bajaj Electricals, Bennett Coleman, the Times Group, Torrent Pharmaceuticals Limited, and many others. He also serves on various advisory boards. He is the chairman of the Institute of Directors, Western Region, as well as of the Ethics and Governance Committee of CII Western Region. Uh, if I listed his numerous achievements, we may not have time left for the session. So, sir, I'm taking your privilege to actually make it a little more concise. He's authored a book called The Digital Professional. So he's absolutely the spot on right person to be here. And I do hope that we will all benefit from partaking of your data lake of knowledge and wisdom, sir. Next is my old friend, Mr. Abdul Qadir Obaid Ali, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Smart World, a joint venture between Etisalat and Dubai South, which focuses on digital operation, implementation, and smart solutions. He is leading in exploring new technologies, including blockchain, particularly in security areas, and we look forward to listening to some on that. Chairman of the board of the UAE Internal Audit Associations for the 5th term. He was selected to serve on II's Global Advocacy Committee and nominated to chair the Federation of Arab Institutes of Internal Auditors. He has been the chief of internal audit of Dubai World Group and has headed various departments as well. He has multiple qualifications. If I remember correctly, a Bachelor of Science in the USA, a Masters of Science in the UK. As they say, a good scientific temperament with curiosity, which an internal auditor should possess, makes for a perfect combination. And here you have someone who's a CIA, a CRMA, and a QIL, all terms which I'm sure my internal audit and IIA colleagues would resonate with and appreciate. We really look forward to listening to you, Abdul Qadir. Karthik Radia is the managing director of Mazars India LLP, one of the leading international accounting and consulting firms with a strength of 40,000 people in 104 countries and 318 offices across the globe. In India, Mazars has a team of 1,300 plus people, 40 partners, 7 plus cities with a range of advisory services. Karthik is a CSA, a qualified chartered accountant, a cost and management accountant, company secretary, CPA, and last but definitely not the least, a certified internal auditor. And then we have Kabir Ahmed Shakir, who is a global finance leader with over 27 years of experience across finance and business in diverse industries and geographies. Until recently, he was the CFO of Microsoft India with responsibility for MS's overall finance leadership, spanning financial and strategic planning, business performance management, financial analyses and reporting, controllership, internal controls, compliance, and risk management. Prior to which he spent 23 years with Unilever, which I think is a kind of a source for leaders, business leaders in most well-known Indian organizations. Our very own president, Mr. TK, is also from there. He spent 22 years there. Kabir is now an angel investor to various startups. He's an avid speaker, contributing his thoughts at various management and finance events. I've personally heard him speak, and he's absolutely delightful to listen to. And he is particularly passionate to talk about technology and how it would shape the future of the finance function. So we will now move on to the panel discussion. I will take a couple of minutes to set the context, after which we will pose questions in turn to each of the panelists. As far as our session today is concerned, I think all of you are aware of the data explosion and inundation which is taking place in our personal lives. The global data sphere has moved from 8.5 zettabytes, with 1 zettabyte being a trillion GB, 8.5 zettabytes in 2015 to 40 zettabytes in 2020. And this is expected to go up further to 175 zettabytes in 2025. Another fact is that over the last few years, we have been increasingly hearing, reading, and at times seeing disruptions and disruptive technology impacting industries, organizations, and processes. We all know that there is a marked increase in the use of data analytics and data analytical tools in the internal audit profession. Forbes has recently estimated that 70% of organizations and enterprises across various industries will be implementing artificial intelligence in the next 12 months. If there is one positive thing that COVID-19 has brought to us, is the fact that it has thrust technology onto us as well as its usage. So now we are forced to use technology at a much, much more rapid pace than we were planning to or looking at earlier. Terms like robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, blockchain, machine learning were earlier terms we used to hear about in seminars. Now, suddenly from those discussions, we are seeing that there is actual usage of all these technologies in forward-looking organizations. And I'm sure many of my esteemed panelists are extremely familiar with what this usage is like. Just last week, we had Karthik's colleagues telling us as to how RPA is actually being used for the purpose of internal auditing. And yesterday, all of you heard Apurv Yatindra also telling us about how RPA can be used by internal auditors. In order to better understand how we could actually use these technologies, how we could train, how we could practically apply these, we have these brilliant panelists, and I am now going to move on to the question session with your permission. The first question is going to be to our senior most panelist and most respected panelist, Mr. Sailesh Haribhakti. The explosion of data has resulted in data lakes, both within and around organizational ecosystems. Is there a need for the internal audit profession to focus more on big data? And how do you see us doing that? Over to you, sir.
What a fantastic question to start off this wonderful session. Thank you, IIA, for this extraordinary conference. I've been attending these conferences for many years, but this one is special because it is online, it is on Zoom, it is on collaborative platform. And I think that's the new world that we need to embrace. To answer your question, certainly yes. Data lakes have become so deep, as you yourself pointed out, and data streams out of these lakes to make the idea of entity-based accounting and auditing more or less obsolete. It is no advantage to keep looking and checking back on what went wrong. What is important is to capture the data streams into your internal audit processes. Do an outside in, inside out process. Add intelligence to every auditor and every operating manager. We can call it artificial, you can call it augmented. Make sure that machine learning sits on top, and deep data analytics enables you to look at the patterns that emerge from this flowing stream of data. That's what's going to give internal audit its space in the sun. And that's where we belong, because what we can deliver is insight. And let me give just one dramatic example of what you can do. Take a hotel company which has met with such serious loss of business under COVID. How can you as internal auditors transform this? So look at the possibility of what experience has made customers come back and what has made them come and spend a night or two in your hotel or your resort or your place, and see how you can replicate that to all other rooms that you have in your inventory. Equally, look at the bad experiences of customers who, having made a booking, did not turn up or canceled. And you will find insights in both these populations, both these data sets, which will enable you to convey what customer experience will actually bring the customers back. And I think this has become the challenge across the board in all our internal audit work. We must look for what can raise productivity. The global statistic is that every organization today can raise its productivity by at least 50%. Now, 50% is a huge, huge number. And this can be done through processes of digitalization. Not that everybody is fully digitalized. Everybody is on different journeys. And our task as internal auditors would have to be to make sure that this journey completes itself. And we are part of the process, partnering to make sure that this extraordinary productivity increase that is today feasible, it's sitting there, it's low-hanging fruit. We need to help pluck it and make sure that we can get the position of being true partners in enhancing organizational efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer, sir. One benefit we've certainly had is we've had a lot of five-star hotels now starting to cater at home, so you can get great food at relatively reasonable prices. So we are all enjoying that.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Abdul Kader, as the CEO of Smart World, as well as a science graduate, a master of science, and an internal auditor, how do you see lives being changed by technology? And how do you think internal audit could adapt to increase its effectiveness? Sir, you're on mute, please. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank IIA India for the invite. I do appreciate it, and I'm really glad to be on such an esteemed, really panelist, and I'll try and to become as brief as possible. I think the question was already somehow answered. However, really, and I think we always look onto the negative side of things, but let us look into the positive side of COVID. If there is a positive side, I think there is a positive side to COVID. What it actually did to most organizations, yes, it hit some worse than others, but people in the IT, with all respect, it was some kind of a positive thing for the IT people. Because I think if, you know, to talk about today, who would have actually thought that we will have a virtual conference today? You just have to look at what Zoom is doing, or Microsoft is doing, or WebEx is doing, you know, across. It is also an opportunity. But I think really, you know, the advantage of IT to our life, can you imagine you getting up in the morning and going to work today without your mobile? I would dare any of the panelists or any of the people who are actually sitting can actually go to work and actually leave their mobile at home. Would you be able to do that? It almost will be impossible. Can you imagine if you lost your mobile, what's going to happen to you? We are so, you know, we're so infused with the IT. It's becoming, you know, it's just that it is how it is right now. You cannot imagine, or if you can go back and think when the first fax was installed to where we are today. Yes, it affected us because it definitely enhanced communication. And I think it's so important that today we have people from Australia, people from India, people from the Middle East, all connected in a platform where we can communicate. Effective communication, East with West. That I see a big advantage for us. I also see that, you know, it impacted the health. Now, in terms of health, yes, it can, and it has done to certain cases that you trying to change the way you are, where you are sitting, where if you're a hospital, you're no longer going to have to wait for patient. You go and meet people. A person at home can be tested while he's at home. He can have everything he wants. A doctor can be miles away from him can identify and move forward in there. Today, education, and I don't know about you, but still my kids are actually going to school, but they're actually going to school from home. I mean, they are actually getting educated. My kids, my oldest is going to the university, but she's staying at home doing it. Okay, because if without technology, you cannot actually do this. Okay, before the pandemic, the traveling caused us a bit of problem, but it's always easier to do. I think one thing, if I look at our internal auditors and I say, what do they really need to do? I think it's the best thing that really happened to us because it gave us a wake up. We really need to try to move out of our internal audit and move in the other side and be the real advisors to our management. Our management are looking for people to try and to support us during this time. And I would put all of the auditors as consultant in this particular area where they can come and give advice to the consultant. But first, are we as internal auditor ready to take this on? Do we have the know-how? And this is really the one thing I'm asking is, it's a golden opportunity that we learn. And it's nothing wrong with learning. We need to learn, move, take new skills to be able to try and to add advantage. I see a problem in some of the areas, some of the internal auditors were still thinking of doing things the old way. I did a small survey of the chief audits here in the UAE. Not a single person came to me and said, my audit plan is out of the door. It's totally out of the door. I have to try to think of a totally different ways going forward. Today, 80% of anything you do is coming through cameras. Now, that is where the new data, that's where these, 4 zillion you're talking about, all the data is coming from cameras. And what can you do with cameras? You can do a lot of things now. You, as internal auditor, you can equip yourself with proper AI to be understand, to analyze from a person's expression to see whether this customer is happy or not, to actually put a camera to find out whether actually things are moving smooth. So what I say is, two things is, we as internal auditors, if we do not move on the other side and become the real trusted advisors, the management is going to move forward and they're going to look at somebody else to do that job for us. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us about the wake-up call. I think most of us have already been shaken out of our slumber a few months ago, but for the ones who are left, I think certainly it is a wake-up call, and as you have very, very correctly identified. So, Karthik, if I may ask you, how do you feel that the internal audit profession is responding to this wake-up call? What do you mean by smart and digital internal audit? What is the value proposition of using artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA to enhance our productivity as internal auditors? We would really like to see, because you are the guys who are there on the front line actually doing it.
Sure. So thanks, Nikhil. So the smart and digital way of doing an internal audit, as I call it, as a concept was long overdue. It's no big rocket science, frankly speaking. The overall construct and the objective of internal audit remains the same, doesn't change at all. However, there are three major areas of innovation in the context of smart and digital way of internal auditing. One, on the process workflow front. So the artificial intelligence and machine learning, analytics, RPA will help automate the entire internal audit workflow and processes. And right from audit program preparation to information request to data analysis, data extraction, auditee interactions, report writing, and the entire internal audit process and workflow should be automated. Second, on the experience front, the conversational artificial intelligence, the chatbots, basically help in enhancing the experience for the entire internal audit stakeholder community. And that include the human internal auditors, the board and the audit committee members, the auditees, the third parties, and the senior and middle management. The enhancement of experience will happen in the areas such as dynamic on-demand report generation, report presentation, referencing from the library, statistical data analysis of the past findings, dynamic on-demand audit program preparation. And thirdly, on the physical audit front, the emerging technologies such as drones will help in conducting surprise, scheduled, and even unscheduled physical audits of inventories and fixed assets. We call it as physical verification. And please mind you that for all the physical verification that we did, we made our auditors to travel miles and miles, spending a lot of cost and expenses, and which of course can now be done with the help of drones. And then we also have an IoT that helps in live continuous monitoring of equipments, machines, production systems, transportation, and even the storage systems. So in a nutshell, the smart and digital way of doing internal audit using the emerging technologies will help the human internal auditors to give away all the mundane, repetitive control testing and substantive testing activities to the machine and robots, so that the human internal auditors can focus on strategic, high impact, innovative and creative areas. And this will significantly enhance the productivity and also the ROI for the internal audit function.
Thank you so much, Karthik. I think we earlier used to talk so much about PVs or physical verifications. Now we'll have to start talking about VVs or virtual verifications. So I think that is definitely one of the several, usages which IA profession can use as far as technology is concerned. Kabir, I do remember in one of our earlier chats, you have mentioned that within a span of 4 years at Microsoft, you saw that close to 70% of your work could be done and completed with the use of automotive performance enhancing technologies. Would you like to share with us a little bit about this and how you feel technology per se could be used by internal auditors to reduce maybe 70% of their mundane work?
Thanks a lot, Nikhil. Yes, I mean, before I start, with that, I remember, I was some 10 years into my career, and I got the mandate from my CFO then to set up the first ever shared service center for Hindustan Unilever in India. So those days, outside of GE, I don't think anyone had at least of that kind of a scale. In India, I'm talking about late 90s, early 2000. And when I went about doing that, the one piece of advice, my CFO then, Mr. Sundaram, gave me, which I still have close to my heart, he said, Kabir, you can't, implement 5th generation technology with 1st generation process. Yeah. What went hand in hand, of course, was us to continuously look at our process and re-engineer our processes to be in line with technology. You can't say I will put AI, but I will have manual vouching and ticking, so therefore I'm going to multiply, 5 times my audit force because my business is going 5 times up. Yeah, you just need to, marry the two up. With that as the conduit, and I'll give one, other reference, before I actually jump into to answer your question. Today you are omnipresent as a business. Yeah? You may be present in one country and you may serve local customers. That's irrelevant. Thanks to the internet explosion and the digital revolution that we live in, we are exposed to the entire world, and people can peek in to our businesses from anywhere. A simple thing like, a professor, I think about 2-3 days ago in Britain made a silly comment about idlis, being the most boring food, in the world, and it's taken the Twitter by storm. Yeah, there are millions of tweets and retweets, and some of them humorous, some of them very serious. Tamilians saying, not just Tamilians alone. I mean, it's like, how dare you types and all. Plus some of them saying, making fun of them that a British who only eats bland food talks about idli being a boring food. So there were all sorts of things. Why am I giving this example? I'm giving this example because you need to pick up these data points from anywhere and everywhere. It is not just financial, data that's of relevance to you. It is data that comes from social listening, as in this particular case. It's data that comes from non-financial elements like market share, like customer sentiment, like NPS, all of those things that need to be brought together in order to make yourself as an auditor a lot more intelligent. Yeah. You probably, 5-10 years ago, just looked at finite set of information that the management gave. And at best, I would say the best in class auditors would probably go make a visit to the market and meet customers and suppliers and to find out about what the company is all, but majority of them stayed inside and looked, at the company, on its own. With the explosion of technology, what's basically happening is that you could sit in a remote corner and you could probably have access to anything and everything about the company. Yeah. In the public domain, of course, and also privately, as long as you get access to it, and conduct any kind of audit and be a lot more intelligent, from that perspective. Now, leading to your question, Nikhil, what happened to me personally was that when I actually, was evangelizing this technology to a lot of my CFO peers, I looked at my own diary, and I said, hey, all those products that I'm actually selling, and if I were to implement, and we were implementing it, back then in Microsoft, if I were to implement that, what's going to be my diary looking like? And that's when I took a 3-month shot at my diary, and I looked at that 70% of what I do today will vanish. Yeah. Where do we as finance people spend our time? Forecasting, budgeting, management commentary, analysis, reporting. Yeah. Look at all of those bits that where you actually spend your time on. And I leave the 30% because 30% is for me is people and talent development and business partnering and the conversations. That is not going to be taken away by machines anyway. Yeah. That you need that one-on-one and physical interaction, albeit on a virtual space, but still that you need that human to human interaction in order to, business partner and be effective at it. But the 70% of it, which is, there was a time when you spent, 90% of the time collating data and 10% of the time, reporting data. If that was the split that happened. Now we moved away because that's the efficiency phase where the data collation and collection became, intelligent. Now we moved to the phase where reporting has become automated. Now we move to the next phase of reporting where it is not just automated, but it is also intelligent. We move to the even next phase where it is not just intelligent, but it's also predictive. Yeah. So which means that you are talking about business analytics that is not only helping you, but probably taking over a lot of work of routine, decision making and taking it, further. So those are the areas that I actually see where, as a finance person, as a CXO, where I was personally getting involved, I could actually delegate it, to the machine to be able to do. And trust me, a lot of you will have, concerns about it. But I have tried and tested this both in Unilever, when we actually saw huge amount of volatility in the market, when the Lehman collapse happened, the crude oil, the vegetable oil crisis, the Forex, volatility and competition hitting us on all sides. So we were like, sitting in the middle of a storm. And what really helped us was actually, use of technology and the right process. Because every time, if you were to take a human decision, you would try to bring in intuition and gut feel, and you would probably alter the decision. And if you leave it to technology, which the rules are defined by us only, and when we define rules with a calm and collected mind, we probably do it better than when we are actually exposed in the moment to address, that eventuality where, we could falter. So doing that is when we were able to move all the routine to the machine and handle exceptions of a level of materiality as a CFO. Now, my final comment, I would say, Nikhil, is that is what I would advise to my partners in internal audit, is just mirror two things. Mirror where your business is headed. Karthik and Abdul Qadir, alluded to already, and Mr. Haribhakti also mentioned it, as to where your customers are going, where your business model is going, and go and, be proactive in picking the skill sets there. Yeah, that's the first element that I would actually say. The second one that I would say is look at your CFO and your board and your audit committee. Where are they, making their shift of time? Yeah. And there I have two sub points for you. One, where they're taking the foot off the gas, try and see if the controls and processes are there, which allows them to take the foot off the gas. And second, where they are actually spending their energy augment them, with a right level. Every time there has been a business model change, and there has been many, I've always had my head of internal audit and compliance sit there, and I used to tell him or her, I want you to look from the lens of what could go wrong, and come back and tell me, what could go wrong. I look at my business finance people and say, go and implement this. And I look at my compliance person and say, how are you going to augment and help them actually do that? So those are, I would say, some nuggets that I would leave with, as a response, Nikhil.
No, no, absolutely brilliant nuggets, and lovely to listen to that. Where is the business heading? How much do we understand about our customers? How can we use technology for all these purposes? For some reason, your British professor kind of stuck in my mind, who found the idli is a very bland food. And I wanted to ask him that did he ever try the idli with chutney and sambar or not? But I think we'll leave that for later.
No,
So
that's what Shashi Tharoor tweeted back as a response. He put a
so
little bit of coconut chutney and sambar. So
absolutely. So to come back to the questions, unfortunately, we are already at 5:10, and I think by about quarter past or 20 past latest, we will have to, there are lots of questions which are already coming in. So may I request all the panelists that we try to restrict our, responses to maybe 1 to 2 minutes each, and give the audience a chance to perhaps participate and learn from, the responses to their, I'm sure, very, very need-based questions. So Mr. Haribhakti, Kabir just alluded to the role of the boards, the audit committees, etc. Now, one impression which is there, and definitely present company excluded, that, the boards and audit committees consist of people who may be in their 60s, late 50s, 70s, etc. I mean, excluding myself also. Now, are these guys really tech savvy enough to figure out what is required when we are talking so much about technology? Because I do know that you have written a book, say, on the digital professional, and you love technology and where it's taking you. But do you feel, au general, that this is something that prevails, the knowledge about technology, or how it should be used at the level of the boards and the audit committees? Over to you, sir. Sir, you're on mute, sir.
It absolutely does. And I have no doubt that those boards which do not have that capability are being supplemented very remarkably by people like TK, for example, would never permit me to be a non-technology person on his audit committee. And it is people who are responsible to make sure that the wheel goes round. They are making sure. For example, at NSDL e-governance, we have a half-day session every quarter without fail on considering cybersecurity matters, data privacy, data leakage, any attacks on our sites. It is a matter of grave concern. And if the entire audit committee is not well versed and is not in a position to take the governance calls, you don't need to have the knowledge to be a programmer, but you should have the intelligence to be a learner. And that has become the key attribute on many of our boards and many of our committees, where we must enhance our learning, unlearn, relearn, and make sure that we can make the right contribution. So definitely, yes, there's a huge change in the scenario. India is reckoned as amongst the top 4 or 5 places in the world for good corporate governance. And I think we'll be able to maintain that only if we have extraordinary best practices at our committees and on our boards. Thank you.
Thank you for really keeping that short and sweet. And I think that's one thought which we can carry away with us, that if they do need it, we should be ready to support the board with technology expertise, and ensure that that they are subject matter experts who can brief them on all the pros and cons of technology related issues which are being discussed. So thank you. I think it's a wonderful point to take away. To come back to you, Mr. Abdul Kader, if you could very briefly tell us as to how the UAE IAA is working with blockchain? Because I do know that you are taking some initiatives in that direction. And can the internal audit fraternity benefit from your knowledge in this area? Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, and I think we all have
Thank you.
this came from a point of how do we authenticate any kind of a single paper, whether it is uh, a birth certificate, whether it is a death certificate, whether it is a college degree, where it is a piece of paper that even is a bank guarantee. How do you know that it is authenticated? And further, today with blockchain, the technology is there. What we have done is we've been able to try to apply this technology on the college degrees. We know that there is a lot of fake degrees around the world. Now, one thing that we were able to try to actually do that, and we're currently working at the level of the ministry, that we actually went to some of the national universities and we made sure that all of their degrees are actually published on the blockchain, where I mean they are there forever. Even if the school is no longer there, it doesn't matter because your degree can now be verified through the blockchain. I'm not going to go through the how it has been done, but that's for another session. But to say that we've used technology to make sure that we can get rid of something of a fake degree. For the IAA UAE, what we have done, we have gone and we've taken the same technology and we're issuing all our CPEs on the blockchain to make sure that we can do membership on the blockchain, where I mean it cannot be fake. We also can verify the CPEs are actually published on in the blockchain. So this is something that we have done in here, and we'll be more than actually trying to be happy to try to share it with IAA India if you guys would like it. So I'll be very brief and say that instead of talking about it, we actually have done it.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure we have, hopefully Richard Chambers and Janita John also listening in. I'm sure you get more, you may get a lot more calls than just from IA India as far as this is concerned. But
No
thank
problem.
you. Wonderful to hear about this. To come back to you very quickly, Karthik, in the aftermath of COVID-19, do you see an enhanced role for the internal auditor? How can we add more value? Obviously, during this period, we've been doing a lot of stuff other than internal audit as business support functions as well. So where do you see the expansion of the role or not? Thank you.
So there is absolutely no doubt that there is role addition and enhancement for internal audit function. In my view, the internal auditors will have to look at some of the additional important areas, and there are 5 of them. The first one is corporate resilience framework, going beyond traditional business continuity and traditional enterprise risk management. And I call it traditional, which was a concept just maybe less than a decade back. And now, of course, a critical review of corporate resilience framework, preparedness to deal with various kinds of eventualities, disruptions, and catastrophes. I think that is key. Second, auditing of preparedness for various external scenarios and response to deal with these scenarios. Therefore, stress testing, simulation testing on the various external scenarios. The third one is evaluation of business strategies, the business models and financial models. I don't think internal auditors are presently doing this to a large extent, and I think that will be key going forward. The audit of technological convergence. We're talking about the use of technology in business and internal audit. So, this really means that this is going to be an integration of several disintegrated technologies. How do they converge? On one side, we have business legacy systems like ERP systems. On the other side, we have all kinds of complex emerging technology platforms. So an internal auditor has to look at the effectiveness of this technological convergence or integration. And the last part, which was already being done, but the focus has to be slightly higher, is the in-depth review of cybersecurity. So these are, 5 most important areas where there is a reinforcement of the role for internal audit for some additional areas and increasing the focus on some of the existing areas.
No, thank you so much. I think, Karthik, you put it very briefly and very succinctly that, this is how multiple technologies can be used. How are they going to be, converging within cybersecurity? We are all aware that it's basically where more than one software is talking to another, or more than one softwares. That is where the chinks in the armor also normally are what are being exploited by the hackers. But I think that's the subject of a full discussion on its own. And certainly business continuity, resilience, etc., have all been very beautifully tested over the last 6 to 8 months, undoubtedly. So I will come back to Kabir, that uh, our president and CEO of IIA Global, Mr. Richard Chambers, who should be joining us shortly, exhorts us to move from hindsight to insight to foresight. And we've just been talking about how some technological help could be used for us to move into that role. How do you think technology can actually help us go forward in that direction, Kabir? Very briefly, if you may.
Yeah, no, I will, because
Thank
I
you.
probably alluded to that, earlier. What we were doing, and that's not just for IA. I would say that's for the whole finance function that I actually push, not just in my organization, but I also push that with a lot of the peers, CFO peers that I talk to. Is we earlier had static reports, which basically told us what happened. Yeah, it basically says, okay, sales went down, profits went down, costs went up, blah blah blah. Yeah, and then you went to the next level of some interactive dashboards, which basically said, why did it happen? Yeah, so it not only gave you a report, but it also gave you a drill down and said, by the way, cost went up because raw material from this particular vendor went up. Sales went down because in this region, in this product category, it failed because we lost market share there. So you went to the next why. And you are now interestingly in that space where what will it happen and what can I do to make it happen. These are the two interesting spaces that I would love to explore a lot more on. And what will it happen, don't confuse between speculation and prediction. I'm not here to speculate, okay, will the stock market tomorrow open 5 points up or down? That's gambling and that's speculation. We are not in that business, as business people. We are in the business of predicting with reasonable amount of data to be able to say what is the likely outcome that's going to come out. So I'll give you an example. And this is a project that I did when I was, in Hindustan Lever. At that time, the dollar was trading at 45. Yeah, I mean, 7-8 years ago. And I asked my team saying that what if dollar becomes 70? Yeah. And again, everybody said, oh, speculation. I said, no, not speculation. What if dollar becomes 70? And I'm glad that we are using terms like resilience now, because that's exactly what I said. Is my P&L resilient enough to take the hit of dollar becoming 70? Yeah. And I want to paint that scenario and see what would it be like if dollar becomes 70. And today we are already at 75, 76. So this is not some esoterical stuff that we did. The whole outcome there was, if it becomes 70, what are the elements of my cost that will get hit? How will it get hit relative to competition? Because if the entire competition, entire industries get hit, you just pass on the burden to the customer. Yeah, I mean, the demand will suffer in the short term, but then eventually new equilibrium will set in. But if you are disadvantaged, yeah, then I have time between now until then to go and close the gap. If I'm advantaged, then all my strategies, how do I preserve that advantage vis-a-vis competition? Because if that eventuality were to occur, then I am better off. Now comes the interesting bit. If that eventuality, and I mean in a very honest and diligent way, yeah, in a bona fide way, if that that gap advantage that I have is actually a good advantage, how do I then make that event happen? Yeah, how can I actually trigger that event happen so that I as a company can move ahead in competition and delight my customers much better off. And all of this is tons and tons of data. There is just no way of us to be able to process this data because it is multidimensional. It is a lot of cause and effect, yeah, that we need to understand and then play out those scenarios. to be able to be very precise and very micro focused as to how are we going to win. And win is not, in businesses, win is never one big blow or one big hit that happens once in 20 years. Win is a collection of small wins, especially if you are a multinational working in multi categories, dealing with competition all over the place. Win is a collection of small wins all over the place. Winning a market share, in Kerala, in skin, is important. Winning in detergents in UP, is important. Winning, so it's not just one small win, but winning, across the board. And that only technology can help us. So I would say, yes, that's where we need to move as finance people, as to what that road is beyond the bend. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Know what beyond the bend is, then yes, we can then have all functions aligned with that. Yes.
No, absolutely. Whatever you're saying is absolutely correct, that one big win is normally composed of multiple incremental wins. So if we can start taking those one step at a time, whether it's on technology or whether it's in our role as internal auditors, certainly we'll be able to get to do a lot more if we see it over a slightly more extended period of time. We just have 7.5 minutes left, so I'm going to take the liberty of moving on to the Q&A session. There are two questions which have a similar kind of nature, so I'm going to direct them towards Karthik. I think you're the one with the maximum degrees, so maybe you could help here. Can we seek some inputs? Nitya is asking, and Subhash is asking a similar question. Can we seek some inputs on the specific technology upskilling that we should focus on? Example, SQL. And Subhash is asking that what are the new technology and certifications relating to that an internal auditor should focus on to be tech ready? So over to you, Karthik. I think this is an area where you're...
I would, since it's very specific to SQL, I would say that SQL itself, to a very large extent, is an old data table and an old database. People earlier, when they started talking about data analytics, they started with Excel, then said SQL, and now, of course, there are a lot of unstructured data analytical tools. And I'll not talk about specific technologies, but there are unstructured data tools. What it requires us to do is to go through these kind of important learning tools. Many of these are online learning tools. There are short courses, and I think these can be taken up. Particularly when you talk about areas like Python or MongoDB or some of these data analytical tools. It is important to go through that. Even some of the CAT tools that we were talking about, let's say 4-5 years back, I don't think people are using it quite extensively in the real world. And the auditors, unfortunately, I see them, while the finance functions have already upgraded themselves, I've not seen many audit teams basically actually using really high-ended data tools. So I think some of these courses that can be taken up if they're customized to how it can work and function for an internal audit. And there could be some customized tools that even the IIA and some of the other forums can establish and develop. And this is really on-the-job training. You have to apply those tools in the practical life and make it work and see how it works many a times.
No, thank you so much. I remember also reading an article where a chief of internal auditor, chief audit executive of an organization writes that she actually did a couple of SQL and related certifications for something less than maybe $30 or $35. She did a couple of those courses, and she can talk to the engineers on a one-to-one basis. So, perhaps even taking a few steps individually do help in, getting one more conversant and able to talk to engineers who are actually going to be doing the software coding or to understand what they do. But to come back to maybe one of our first to dive back into the data lakes we were talking about, Mr. Hari Bhakti, Manish Kakkad is asking whether, with regards to utilizing external data lakes for benchmarking processes and adding value, is it the domain of internal audit or business to get access to data lakes? So would you like to handle that, sir? Are you on mute by any chance, sir? Yeah. You are muted.
I'm saying it is the prerogative of business to initiate the process, but invariably business will partner internal audit to see how they can create data sets, get into the blockchain. I just want to shine the spotlight on blockchain for a minute, what it does is it entombs what has been processed. And what that does is it creates moments of truth, which can be visible to people who have permission to view it. And that is the biggest advantage of blockchain. So it will have to be a partnership between business and internal auditors. The other thing I would like to suggest is that as an internal audit group, you should yourself form multidisciplinary teams. Today, coding is obsolete. What you need is access to software as a service. Bring in machine learning software. There are websites, PTC is one, Xperify is another. There are many places where you can simply source technology, which will enable you to get going. So dipping into a data lake, creating data sets. Take the case of Lemonade. What they did is they completely disrupted the insurance business, a staid 125-year-old business, fully disrupted. They have 3 chat boxes. They finish underwriting in 90 seconds. They pay claims in 3 seconds. And that's what technology, disruption, partnering, and this is their work style. They don't work in groups. It's not as if an auditor's duty is only this. This is the new world that we need to wake up to.
No, thank you so much. I think we just have about 2 minutes. So with your permission, I could probably, ask everyone to give a 10-20 second final comments from your side, starting with Mr. Hari Bhakti.
Be brave, don't hesitate, go out, embrace technology, deploy it, and you'll win the world.
Thank you so much. How wonderful and how succinct. Mr. Abdul Kader.
I think you always look in the positive side of things. We've gone through these challenges. These challenges affected all of us, but there's always a brighter side on the other side. We should always be positive to whatever it hit us. And we as internal audit are the mechanism for the change in the organization. Let us take this opportunity to become the real consultant for our business at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Karthik.
Yeah, so one very important point, a lot of times people have a fear and a myth, especially internal auditors, what will happen if our jobs will get replaced, robots will take over. My real point there is not a possibility that robots or machines will take away the entire internal audit job away. Take an example of industrial, IT, agricultural, all different kinds of revolutions. Most of these automations and modernizations have only helped the human talent to work and complement along with machines to work on intuitive and creative areas is what it enables the human beings to do. Take an example of also ERP systems like SAP systems. They have not replaced the human beings, but they've actually enabled the human talent to learn the electronic way of living and maybe more efficient way of keeping records. So it is only going to complement so that we can do some next level of growth in our personal lives and also for our organization and for our economies.
Fantastic. And maybe in 15 seconds, please, Kabir.
I would say learning agility. Yeah. Fail fast. I mean, today it is AI, ML, blockchain. Tomorrow it will be something else. But as long as you have that curiosity, you have that learning agility. And if you are brave enough to fail and fail fast, I think that's great.
So great. Thank you all for an absolutely fantastic session. I think we managed to complete it in time. Burzen, with your permission, I'll just take 1 minute to sum up. According to me, the learnings are that the biggest risk that we face is of inaction. As Mr. Hari Bhakti says, we need to be fearless. We need to stay ahead of the technology curve. We should not be scared of making our mistakes and as well as sharpening our existing skills. As Karthik also specifies, that the winner, and I read this somewhere actually, the winner will not be humans alone or machines alone. It will actually be if both of them can work together effectively to provide service to the organizations they work with. So thank you so very much, all of you. I think it was a fantastic session, but I don't want to keep the participants away from Mr. Richard Chambers, who's been kind enough to take out 15 minutes of his personal time, maybe sitting at some airport in America. So over and back to you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. And gentlemen, on behalf of IIA India, once again, my personal thanks as well.